I am the chair of the Land Use and Housing Committee, and my vice chair is Tanya Chavez. I don't know if she's on yet, but you'll meet her soon as well. We're excited to have you on board. And while Raphael's doing the live streaming, I think we're all a little bit familiar with this rezoning. This is the TD Bank location that we've discussed a little bit sort of informally in the past. So I'm excited to see what we have in store.
We're streaming for me. We're good.
Great. All right. Why don't we get started then?
Great, thanks. What's the best place to stand so I can see everyone?
Or come around when we come on the way.
Okay, good. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you. It'll be a first. Right. So thanks to everyone for joining. My name is Richard Lobel. I'm from the law firm of Sheldon Lobel. It's good to see everyone here again. I'm joined by Ashley Fina, who is our applicant, as well as Nick Liberis, our project architect. Hi, Nick. Hi, over here. So this is, as the chair said, this is the 2131 46th Avenue rezoning. I'm just going to run briefly through a land use rationale. The first couple of slides talk about the background of the rezoning and the context of the rezoning. Then I'm going to hand it over to Nick, who's going to go in a little more into the specifics of the application and the proposed massing and such. So the next slide is a project summary. So why are we before the community board today? As was mentioned, this is at the site of the TD Bank building. And that site for the last 20 years plus has been zoned M14R6B. And that zoning district, although paired with a residential district, has not resulted in any meaningful development and has not resulted in any residential development. In fact, what you see there is the small bank building and associated parking with that. So the proposal right now would be to rezone that site from the existing R6B district to an R7X-C25. So what that basically does is provides the opportunity on a site which is underbuilt right now and which has no residential units on it to be rebuilt with a building which would be 11 stories. It would be roughly 80,000 square feet. This district right now, and we're going to go into the maps and kind of show that, was chosen because we are currently adjacent to an R7X-C25 zoning district. It's adjacent to us on the east and has resulted in a building which is 11 stories itself. So when discussing this with city planning and how this related to the area, they pointed to this building next to us and said, okay, given the fact that that building is an existing building and the context of that immediate block is 11 stories, it would be appropriate to request an R7X with a commercial overlay to allow for a building that matched that. Importantly, since we are now in mandatory inclusionary housing, the second aspect of the application would be a text amendment, which would require that a mandatory inclusionary housing zone be zoned with the rezoning, so that, as the board is aware, in this case, 25% of the units would have to be affordable. And so if we're generating roughly 80 units or so, we would have 18 affordable units, as we'll discuss in the coming slides. The next slide. So these are the numbers behind the proposed development. So again, we have an 11-story plus cellar building matching the building immediately to our east, as will be demonstrated on the plans and pictures that come. The building floor area, roughly 80,000 square feet, which would allow for 8,000 square feet of ground floor community facility or commercial use. And while we've talked about it internally with Ashley, she's basically kept an openness in terms of what that's going to be used for, whether or not it's local retail or some other uses suggested by the community. The base height of the building, 82 feet, with a setback at the 10th story and a total height of 112 feet, roughly matching the height of that adjacent building. The affordable units here, again, 18 units at option 1. And then depending on the configuration, right now, there's a penciling out of 70 units, but Nick may discuss some modifications in terms of unit sizes. There's no required parking at the site, but there are 22 voluntary spaces which we're putting in the cellar of the building. Next slide begins next portion of the presentation. I would just go one more slide if you can, Amanda. So just to locate people at the site, again, you see the area circled in red, adjacent to our building, the 11-story glass building, as well as some larger buildings, of course, in the larger area. I guess, Nick, if you want to start, you can talk a little bit about the building, and then we can talk about contents.
Yeah, so the two things that really stand about this site to me when I first looked at it were the fact, well, one was the fact that this was an M14 up until like 2002, 2003. And when they turned it into an R6B, it was almost as if they just kosher what was there that was existing, you know, which is what's commonly done. But there's no real thought as to, you know, what this site is in this emergent kind of thing that's happening over there. And at that point, I could recall it was before the Bloomberg, you know, the big moves over there. So, you know, I think people just didn't know where this stuff would be land. So, you know, when you look at the one LIC, you can see that this area is still kind of like a no man's land. It's surrounded by, you know, much more density. But when you go back to that picture, can you go back to the previous picture, please? When you go back, you could clearly see that the way that this entire area to the west will be developed, and the way that this to the east is being developed, you have this pocket which is kind of like an anomaly, and this is something that is emphasized when you go down to the street, and that's something that we'll look at a little bit further into the presentation. Can you go forward to slide, please? Okay, so this is the typical land use. You can see that there's a lot of multifamily that's here now. You can see the institutional stuff, PS1 MoMA right there, and the post office to the left, the R7X coming up. Next slide, please. Okay, and you can see that, you know, there's this site is characterized now by these massive towers that are right there looming right next to the site. Next slide, please. This is looking to the east and also to the south. This is down Crane Street. You can see that this view is also characterized by these large towers bringing the view towards the water. Next slide, please. So what we did with the previous proposal was a slight tweak. We're still at 11 floors, but what we tried to do is we've tried to use what we know from all the rental product that we've been doing in this area over the past five years to inform both the unit sizes and also some of the ways that these amenities are set up. So we have a lot more stuff planned for that second floor in the back with that rooftop. There's some more consideration for outdoor space, because we see that really helps stuff rent very well in this area. And we meet all of the HPD tests, whether we want to go with the test where we provide half of the if we do half two beds and then the mix, you know, 1-3 studios for the rest, or if we do the proportionate mix. So either way, this works. So it's really up to the future developer to, you know, to figure out exactly how they want to do it. But this pencils out well, and you end up with a lot more units than what we had before. I think you could probably go up to about 90 units max if you really push it. But what we're seeing from this area is something closer to this average unit size in this unit mix. So what this gives you is something that has many more three beds, and these also will be 3 beds that will have some affordability. And the unit sizes are they're a little bit smaller than what was laid out before, but we really went through it with a fine-tooth comb. And what we see with this depth site is that you can make units that have home offices. You can make deep units that are very, very furnishable. So it's just something that we think will be good for everybody. And we end up with some more 60 AMI units. So we end up with, I believe we went up to 21 units. So we have, you know, as we proposed 60% AMI. This is something that would also let us do UAP. Well, I guess it's MIH, so it's good. So, but yeah, so this is a very feasible building. We think we can make a very nice building, especially with this site, because the site right next to PS1 over here. If you will go to the next slide, please. So this is just a quick look. This is where this where this is situated. And you could see that it's really not out of scale with anything around it. You would probably, I mean, I would argue looking at the way that R7X was made, you know, like over the years, it's just something that kind of created up. So you see it coming up Jackson in this kind of, you know, piecemeal way. So I think this is probably like a more natural move because next slide, please. What you can see is that when you're on the street, what you have here is essentially a full frontage that's on Jackson. Like you have this little parklet type thing happening over here, but it's not really, you know, it's not really a separate street from that urbanistic perspective. So this looks like it's a very natural move. The other thing is that because we have all this empty space around it, this zone lets us become creative with how we kind of pocket in and out. If we were constricted to something else, it would be difficult to do some of these moves that we show over here. So, for example, we set back a lot lower, closer to the R6B. This is something that the zoning does not require you to do anymore. But now we still do it anyway, just because it feels nice. We also set back a little bit lower on this right side, and up above the setback, we pulled the building in from both sides. So it's a very distinctive type of massing that you don't see a lot in other parts of the city. Generally, what you'll see like a continuous street wall. And over here, we're able to have this more sculptural effect because we're able to kind of pull the building back on all sides. And since the stuff to the west has been developed somewhat, we don't think that the building right next to us will really get that tall. So this is going to be an enduring presence for this area, and you just have an opportunity to do something that looks nice from all sides. So we kind of played with that a bit. You can also see that the side of the building closest to Jackson kind of ties into the little park over there. So the way that we were thinking about the programming was that we would put some sort of retail over there. I think it's probably pretty good for some F&B. The parking we kept all the way to the end over there. We were really arguing about it back and forth about which side would be preferable, but we don't want to mix people coming in and out with the retail program, which is probably going to end up going back and forth to that little park. And there's enough traffic slowing as you come around the corner where we feel confident that, you know, cars won't be that much of it anyway. So, you know, if we could control for them going slowly as they get right in front of the building, better to have the parking over to the west over there. So the main entry for the residential would be next to the parking. Next slide, please. And then you can see over here, this is what that perspective would be. So, you know, perspectival effects being what they are, stuff always looks bigger. And that's something that we're not trying to run from, but we want to really look at what that looks like on the street. So, you know, you can see over here that this is a very, you know, normal juxtaposition that you see all over the city, even in less dense parts of Queens, where, you know, you have something which is a 6-story building, which is next to the 3-story building. We just think that this could be something that could be like a very positive addition to the neighborhood, a nice backdrop in perpetuity for this for PS1, and we just think it's a win-win for everybody. So with that,
Yeah, so we would just add that when we look at rezonings, we talk to the Department of City Planning, and a lot of it is around context, and we look at the street conditions, surrounding zoning districts, transportation in the area. And so when we look at the street conditions here, because of Jackson Avenue being perpendicular to 46, we end up with this condition where we have close to 200 to 250 feet in front of the property. So it really does feel like an expansive wide street in front of this property. The transportation options in the area, as everyone is aware, are, you know, the transportation abounds here. There's 4 different subway lines within 2 blocks of the property and 3 different stops. So it really allows for great transportation options. The site itself is underbuilt, currently underbuilt, pursuant to the R6B. There's no residential on the property right now. You're not looking at any displacement of the site. And finally, in terms of context, you do have the next door building, which is R7X, built to 11 stories. And that zoning district would only drag over to cover this one lot. So to conclude Nick's portion of the presentation, we think it's a thoughtful design. We feel that it has merit. And with that, the applicant team is happy to answer any questions.
So thanks for the presentation. A few thoughts on my end before we go to the rest of the committee. So just for context for everyone, we are currently in the ULURP review period. So today we're going to have to vote on a committee recommendation, and then we're going to bring the recommendation to the next board meeting in early May, and then the whole board's going to vote on it for our ULURP feedback. In terms of this proposal, I like that you all went with MIH option one. Just FYI, this board generally prefers deeper affordability. So we prefer option one to option two, even though there is, a smaller percentage of affordable in the building. So appreciate you doing that. Overall, to me, this seems like just classic spot upzoning in the LIC core. It's in a very transit-rich location. There's an existing nearby high-density corridor on Jackson Avenue. The scale is relatively modest. It seems like it's incremental and not, anything transformative. One thing that I do want to bring up is it might have been a year or two ago, but some residents at the Prime, the building next door, they came to our committee and brought up concerns about, the proposed development at that point. I don't personally see the issues. To me, this is a relatively low risk, pro-housing project. But I did want to bring up some of the concerns that people had. They were talking about how this sort of corner didn't need any more density. It was already pretty heavily trafficked. And then the other thing worth mentioning is I don't know what the current status of this is, and you sort of made a reference to it, but the plaza that's in front of MoMA PS1, that's right next to this, there had been plans to expand and reconstruct it and make it into like a proper pedestrian plaza. So just something to think about as, you do have these 22 parking spaces you're proposing in the cellar. I don't know how, that might interact with that pedestrian plaza and how annoying that could be. But otherwise, why don't we go to Kenny, who has his, actually, if you want to respond to any of that on the developer's end, feel free. But if not, then we'll start going to Kenny and the other people on the committee.
Yeah, sure. So the plaza, I think that the way that the traffic is currently configured, you really have to make a very difficult left-hand turn if you're heading east, and if you're heading west, you'll be going slow anyway. So I think if you're thinking about people walking back and forth between the plaza going, to the building, I think it's the type of speed traffic-wise that is not going to be that much of an issue. With regard to Prime. That's something that we did actually look at. This shape of their site lets them do something very, very interesting, and it threw us off at first because it looks like there's a lot of fenestration on a side lot line that looks like it exceeds what you'd be able to do by the code. But when we looked at it closely, what we saw was that the angle of this of the building vis-a-vis the lot line lets them do a lot more glazing, so they can't get legal light and air from almost all of those windows that are on that side, but they do have windows. So my guess would be that any kind of opposition would be because people don't want something blocking the windows, and we feel the same. We don't want to be sitting there like blocking people's windows if we don't have to, which is also why we pulled the building back. So the size and the shape of the site let us pull it back, so we're able to pull it back, and we actually have some windows on our side too. So.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the hand queue first. Kenny, Christine, and then Michael, and then we'll go to the room. And Raphael, I could use your help in the room for people who have comments. So Kenny, take it away.
Hi, I have a comment and a question. And the comment, you shouldn't take it to mean that I'm opposed to the project. I think the project does make sense, but I just want to point out that the presentation is very much compared itself to what's across the street and describes potential future development to the west, when in reality, you're on a block with several low-rise buildings that wrap around the block. And then on 21st Street, you have a church there as well. So it's just, I would like to see a presentation that, shows that a little more realistically. The very last slide you showed does show one of the lower-rise buildings. It's just a point. In terms of that particular section, I don't think that we can get any more, I don't think extra density really makes a big difference. Oh boy, am I still here? Can you hear me? Yeah.
We can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, I lost my computer for a moment. My question though is, when you talk about uses for the community space, one of the things this board is looking for is as many opportunities as possible to provide reasonably cost or low cost space for our local art organizations. Is that something that's come up with your team at all, and is it something you would be open to?
Yeah, hi, Ashley, absolutely. I like just level setting. My family's been in Queens for 80 something years. We've been in Long Island City for over 40 years. And with the proximity, especially to PS1, we really see this as an opportunity to work with you all. We haven't figured it out just as we're going through this, but what I'd say is, we want to be accretive to the community and make sure that this works for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go to Christine.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. I appreciate the unit mix that you're proposing, although I gather that there's nothing in the rezoning that would tie tie down that unit mix. In other words, the majority of of larger units. But and so correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right.
Okay. So we would just have to keep making that case to the best that we could. But two questions. One, just looking at this rendering, I see the curb cut that I think you described, which is the one to the left in the rendering for the the vehicular entrance, but then I see another one just as wide further to the right. Are they both vehicular curb cuts?
You know what? That's a vestige of the older site. I mean, that's how it is now. Right now, there's a bank that's on site, so there's a huge curb cut at the east end where you access the parking lot, and then there's some parking behind the bank. So, sorry about that. We should have edited it.
Yeah, you should change that. There wouldn't be two curb cuts. The other comment that I have is about the relationship of this building to this small 3-story house next door. And I mean, the design of that, lot line facade almost reads to me like there's just an expectation that that house is going to go. I mean, there's no attempt to really turn the corner in any kind of sculptural, or have the building turn the corner. And I wonder if that is your expectation.
We haven't really talked about it much. I think that were something to redevelop over here, it would probably go closer to the lot line because it would be compelled to do so by the zoning. But usually what we do when this becomes an issue is that we will propose that some local artist does some sort of muraling over here. So there's stuff across the street that's there now. Maybe it could be the start of a nice muraling district in this area. But I don't think that we could really, there's not much that we could really do just because, like you say, we don't know what's going to happen next door. And, if you like, we could propose to do something. We could propose to do some sort of mural.
Yeah. Or, return the facade materials further into, I don't know. It just, I read this, and what I read is sort of the gradual attrition of the low-rise existing units that exist in this neighborhood. And it's it's kind of sad to see.
We could definitely change that. We could definitely change that within the rendering, but I mean, I think that's something that you guys would have to work out going forward if it's something that you really want to commit to.
How would we commit to it? I mean, we don't have the power to. You mean that there would be a proposal to somehow preserve more of the low?
I think it's basically on our end to give assurances that we're going to continue the materiality around the corner.
Yeah.
And of course, there's restrictions, Christine, of course, that are written into zoning and ones that aren't. And we find ourselves in this position a lot where, unless it's restricted in the zoning, you have kind of this open-ended, in this case, design context. But having said that, just as far as Ashley and our conversations internally, as she said, their family has been here forever and really wants to work with people in terms of, we had conversations about artist uses internally for the last year, because obviously you have the surrounding context and you've got PS1. So like, we're happy to have those conversations and make good faith commitments to really follow through, because we're sticking around and we have no interest in doing otherwise. So I think that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you.
Christine, Michael.
Thanks. Thanks for the presentation. Just had some clarifying question. I guess first is high level context. This strikes me as kind of benign. I mean, I don't live particularly close to this site, but I've walked past it a lot. Often going to Trader Joe's or to the Court Square subway. And yeah, it's always struck me as kind of a really odd land use with the surface parking lot right next to many much taller buildings. So certainly not surprised to see this, and it sort of makes sense given the context. But I just wanted to ask a couple questions. So the first is just about the unit size in the unit count in the voiceover in the presentation. I heard 18 affordable units, which would imply 72 total units, but then the deck actually said 84 and 21. So I was just curious if you could confirm that what's on the deck is the expected number of units.
Yeah, I think the deck is probably closer to the expected number, but that being said, when this thing actually goes into more full design, you're going to be subject to what the broker tell you to do, to what the market dictates. So, this is a good, accurate prediction for right now. And I don't see it really changing. So I would say that
Okay.
This is probably it.
So 8421 is like the expected number of units,
Yes.
but it could change. Okay, thanks. And then I had one just more for my curiosity, although I mean I have some point of view on this, was about the parking ratio. I mean, it's obviously not like extremely high or anything, but it's like a little higher, I think, than some buildings in this neighborhood, which often will not have any parking. I mean, obviously some of them do have parking. This is a ratio that's a little above a quarter. I was just curious if you could chat about that. I mean, all is equal. I was going to ask about the curb cut that Christine mentioned as well. One curb cut is obviously better than two on this lot, but like all is equal, having no curb cuts would be, better for the pedestrian experience and have, one more street parking space. So I was just curious if you could speak a little bit to that, and
sure.
if you had considered any alternatives, like just having more retail space on the street level.
Sure. So what we're seeing right now, we're seeing 20 to 25% being the normal benchmark for these size buildings as what gets rented out faster. So if we're having less than that, sometimes it becomes an issue with like lease up. And this is really something that hasn't really become apparent until recently. Like lease ups have been a lot slower this past year than they have in the past five years. So we see the difference with like places that have this extra parking, basically. So that's one thing. With regard to us changing it at this juncture, I think it would be difficult just because I think we'd have to go for a special permit at this point, right? Like we'd have to.
Not to reduce.
I guess no, because it's already LIC, so we don't have to do it. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I think, we don't have to do the parking. It just seems like it does help these things lease up faster, and it would be my recommendation that they do have this much parking.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, let's go to the room. Raphael, can you help?
Brad and Maury, and Tanya wanted to give.
All right, let's do it in that order. Brad, Maury, Tanya.
Yeah, as a follow-up to the parking question, I think I agree that if we can drop that, it'd be a good thing. I also wonder, with if it's 21 or like if it's less than that in the zoning, do you need a 24-foot wide two-way park entrance? Like could we neck down the size of
Make it
that
smaller,
curb
yeah.
cut and
Yeah.
get a little bit more retail?
Yeah.
I think that would be, it might also slow the traffic down a little bit.
We can do that for sure, yeah.
Because people have to kind of be a little more careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that I would push back on though is that these units, they are larger, and you will have families and stuff here, so there will be people that have cars, and it's like such a great area, it just seems like these people would want to come here with their cars,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't really speak to the lease up thing, but it is literally right next to Court Square Station. That's true. Yeah. So I think that And also, is the parking on the ground floor or is it in the?
No, it's not.
Okay. Okay, so most of the ground floor is like lobby and.
Retail, no.
Okay.
About 10K retail.
And then, I can't, it's a little bit hard to read some of these notations, but is there additional height that you're not using on the site?
Correct, yeah.
Because my personal opinion, I'm sure that there's a variety of opinions on this, but given the way that that top volume is set back,
Mhm.
I would be okay with getting more housing, you know, going a little higher, because I don't think it really has a big presence on the street.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The consideration there is that there's a certain floor plate size, so there's a certain size where it becomes less efficient.
Mhm.
And we only have 6.0 FAR, so it's not like we'll be getting any more FAR, so this is like a good.
I see.
high efficiency.
Last question, so is the developer your family, or is there a firm involved?
It's, I mean, since we're still in the mix, it's all, but it's my family with partners. We've, again, like we've been in real estate, that's not like what we do, but like just been part of the community. We're on the other side of LIC in the industrial area as well. And so we're trying to figure this out and then figure out the, best partner, but we've had different partners for different projects before.
That's it, thanks.
Thanks, Brad. Let's go to Maury.
So I'm gonna echo what some of my colleagues here said about the mix is really good. We like to see larger apartments and families being able to be in there. Great. I'm gonna echo the point about the parking. We were so grateful at City of Yes, passing and then the requirements for parking going away like they were before. This board has been traditionally encouraging of ways for people, especially when there's when you're not in a transit desert and you have a lot of alternatives to get around, not creating more problems for climate and congestion with more parking spaces. So we would encourage less and using that space that would be used for parking that could benefit the community, the tenants and others. I know it's sexy to be able to say we got parking and you can, but I would hope you're going to be on the right side of history, which there's been a trend towards more alternative ways of transport. And the big transportation glut, I shouldn't say glut, but we have lots of different ways, in that area. So we don't want to clutter it up with more cars. That said, if you are going to have some cars there, we would really encourage, or I know that a lot of us on the board and the community want to make sure there's plenty of parking for bikes as well as safe capacity for charging stations for e-bikes if they're going to use that, and also charging for electric vehicles, plenty enough for that as well. And then the other thing is, can we have any greenery, landscaping outside the building? Because
You should, I think you should, like, we've actually set it back a lot in the front, so we're thinking like, between F&B stuff, trees and like planters on the sidewalk, it's a beautiful site, you could really like
Yeah.
frame it really well with that, with the triangles, I think that makes it,
Yeah.
I think anybody who would do something over here, I think that it's like, once you build it, it'll become obvious that this should be there.
yeah, and I would just add that if you're interested in participating with the community or arts and things like that, definitely connect in with the small business committee that I chair and the arts and culture committee.
Yeah.
We've been working together to try to organize some kind of muraling thing and working with local artists. So I'm sure Carisha, the chair of that committee, would love to talk to you, and we can talk to the small business committee.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, let's go to Tanya.
Oh,
Well, I do have 3 comments, but one of those I'm gonna start with is parking. Actually, that area does not have parking.
Good.
Very tough to not to find a parking, especially like when you're coming late. So I would prefer we get like an analysis of why are you proposing those 22 parkings? And if we can reconsider that depending on like the radio on how far we have parkings, then, because it's very tough. The other one is, yes, I agree with the green. I was gonna ask you that. It does feel like I see that you have a green rooftop, but I do feel like I want to see a little connection between the plaza and your building, because I feel like right now it's just like.
No, it's
an awesome site.
It's an awesome.
I know we also have like the underground train and the 7 train.
Yeah.
But that connection would help us.
Yeah.
And last, with the local businesses that you have, I would encourage you not only to support the local artists, but the neighborhood, as you well know, has a lot of businesses that are in danger of losing their spots, and they have not found a place. So I'm just gonna request maybe like a subsidize for those businesses that are in danger. That would be great.
Absolutely. And for us, like, we have been in small business, so we're very in tune to that. And we really appreciate all these considerations. So everything you're sharing makes so much sense.
And just to let you know, land use, Kenny will be having a list of all these businesses that are in danger, so we can ask that too.
Well, thanks, Tanya. All right, anyone else before we go to a vote? All right, so what I'm hearing is that most people are probably generally in favor of this. It seems like we probably want a few conditions here. Christine, you brought up, sort of, I guess you could call it beautifying the lot line, either by continuing the facade material or a mural via a local artist. I think a couple of people talked about more greenery, so I think we could add that in. And then the controversial one, or maybe slightly controversial, is probably around the parking spaces. I'm probably more in favor of dropping the parking spaces, given how transit rich it is. So why don't I throw that in as a condition, and then we can, vote up or down the proposal. So I'm going to make a motion to approve with those 3 conditions: the beautifying the lot line, the more greenery, and dropping the parking spaces.
Can I
Great.
propose a 3rd condition or a 4th
Yeah.
condition?
Yeah,
Narrowing the width of the parking entry and curb cut.
yep. I will accept that. Let's do it.
Yeah, can we just sort of say I mean, if there is no parking, then that's like necessarily true. There's no curb cut, right? So this is like, if there is parking, then
Yeah, if there is parking, then
Okay,
there is the curb cut. Yep,
Excellent.
understood.
Thank you.
Yeah. Raphael, can we do a roll call vote? I think you probably have everyone who's here.
Yeah, we do have quorum. We have 9 members. Yeah, we're good. We have 9 members that are attending the meeting, so we can do a roll call.
Yeah, let's do it. You want to call people out?
We do that.
Just call their names.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
For me,
Yes.
me.
Oh, did you say my name?
Yes.
Oh, yes. My name is, I'm voting yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Tanya.
I'm voting yes. Carisha,
She's not in.
okay, Nick,
Yes.
Danielle,
I just want to be clear. We're saying no parking spaces.
We're saying no parking spaces is one of the conditions.
Okay, I'm voting yes, but I really disagree with that.
Can I just add one, I'm sorry, if I just may take a point of privilege. Tanya had mentioned with regards to research in terms of the amount of parking actually needed. I just wanted to say that we actually have done that research in terms of the environmental assessment. So whatever you guys vote, just please be assured that we'll take a look at those numbers, and to the extent that the parking is reduced and not eliminated, we would cater it to what the actual site demand is going to generate. So I just want to let you know that, and thank you for your time.
Yep, makes sense. We understand that we're just advisory here, so we're gonna, just expound on that a little bit.
remind everyone that there are families that need to carry babies around, and there's disabled people that Ubers or taxis don't want to take them. So I just want to be, maybe if we just listen to the analysis that they propose of lowering or why they chose the 22, that would make at least me feel more comfortable.
But can I ask you, you've already done the analysis?
Yeah, I ask, is Christina on the call?
Yes.
Yes.
Would you mind just talking a little bit to the parking? We just wanted our Christina. I'm sorry, Zepansky.
See, now, well,
So-
Rich, we didn't actually do, and I just wanted to be clear, we don't have an analysis in the EAS because this project is so, it's relatively small, so it didn't trigger any type of traffic or parking analysis. And the parking that's being provided is not required; it's just voluntary. But in this area, I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers offhand, but we can provide you with that, like the census data for car ownership in the area. But typically in this area, I used to actually live in Astoria. My husband worked at the Citigroup building. We took the subway to work, and we had a car. And so in this area, car ownership is, I would believe, higher than some other areas of the city, even though there is a subway. There's a lot of subways, a lot of bus routes in this area, but we can definitely get you that census data. So it's you have it in front of you.
I think one more thing to consider too is like if you end up with like destination retail, or if you have some sort of community facility, like some sort of doctor's offices, these have massive trip generations. So it would definitely need some parking.
Maureen?
All right. Heard. Let's continue with the vote.
Kenny? Okay.
I don't see him.
Christine?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yeah, but I have one question though. Are we gonna hear, Permit, you mentioned that there were there was some opposition to this about a year ago. Are we gonna hear from people from the community about this?
They have not shown up. There was, we do public agendas and they did not come up this time. But why don't I take a follow up for myself to email them and invite them to come to the board meeting?
Okay.
But they did come to our committee maybe 2 years ago to talk about how they thought this corner wasn't sort of adequate for increased density.
But it was only those people from the building next to the site, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But can I just jump in on procedurally that we have to have a public hearing at the full board meeting? I mean, we can present a land use recommendation, but the neighbors and everybody, the place that people would come out would be to the full board public hearing. And then, if that influenced, if there was a lot of, a lot of concerns expressed, that might influence the full board.
Yep. Exactly.
So Lauren, it was a yes?
Yeah, I'm saying yes for now because but I would like to hear from the community as well.
Yeah.
Michael?
Yes.
So we passed.
All right. Looks like it was unanimous too. All right. Thanks everyone. And thanks to the presenters. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you all for the time, the thoughtful questions, really appreciate it.
All right, let's keep it moving. We have one other project that we're going to present today. It is 3969 45th Street in Sunnyside. This is for a rear deck. Do we have the presenters?
Yes, we're here.
You need
All right.
right? Privileges to screen share?
Yes.
Okay. What's your name?
Dominic Stula.
Maybe I'll go over there as well.
Sure, go ahead. You get the replies away? You good?
Sure, yeah.
If anybody.
Stand your feet.
We have large.
Yeah, sure.
You can take speed it a little bit there. Thank you.
Oh, over there.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so hello, my name is Jean Pauley. I'm the owner of the property. This has been Zhang, an engineer with our engineering firm. My husband is also the co-owner and his name is Dominic Stiller. He can't be here because he's chairing an actual other community board meeting, transportation, if you want. So So, yeah, so we, are renovating a family home in Sunnyside Gardens. And, we are substantially finished and it's been a long, arduous process. And, but now we're trying to build the deck in the back. And, if you see the pictures of the of the house, how it looked before and then after we did the renovation. I'd like to point out that the back deck, that's on the patio, half of that is a green roof. So half of it is for, you know, sitting or whatever, and the other half is a green. Okay, shall we go through
Yes,
the?
so I am going to jump through the slideshow, give a quick description on what each page is showing. And after that, we will go into more depth about what is shown on each page by Gene. So our first page shown here, it says a title page. It shows the lot size, the front facade, and how the rear facade used to look like and how it looks like now. The second page, this is the overall site plan. We do have a enlarged plan on the next page, but this is how our rear yard looks like and how the deck is proposed to look like. And this page, page 3, is enlarged structure framing plan. It shows where all our beams will go. Page 4 shows the finished surface. So we do show some furniture, some planters, some tables. And this is how we're proposing will look like once it's completed. So this is a overall rear elevation. So if I'm standing in the yard and I'm looking straight at the facade, this is what the deck will look like. And then this is a deck side elevation. So if I'm on a neighboring property and I look at the deck, this is what the side of the deck will look like. Page 7, so is a large elevation. So as I mentioned before, if I'm standing in the yard and looking at the deck from there, this is what that will look like. We also show some pictures of the material we want to use on the lower right side. So we will go into detail about that later. And page 8 is a structure section. So it shows how we use the joists and the posts and how that will be built in the rear deck. Page 9, this is an enlarged plan. We're gonna go into detail later about the panels that we want to put on the skirt board area beneath the deck to prevent animals from going under. And this page 10, it has more details about the mentioned panel. We'll go into detail about that later as well. Page 11, this is about the railing for the deck. And there's some details here of what we want it to look like and some reference photos that we've taken of other railings that we've seen that we want to match. Okay, page 12. So Gene and Dominic do have a few cats in their home, and this is a proposed cat door for the rear deck. So they have easy access from the home up to the deck. Page 13. So there was a lot of concerns about seeing the deck on the street. So we do have some reference photos showing from 45th Street looking in, and here are some other photos at the bottom from the entrance to the easement. So there are some reference photos here. Page 14, we do have some photos of the current existing conditions, looking straight in the yard, our facade, and then pictures from the neighborhood. Page 15 to 22 are reference photos and notes about other decks around the neighborhood and how they do match a lot of our proposed features. So if I scroll through that, see, we do have reference photos, all the different decks in the neighborhood that matches a lot of our features. And then on the last page, we do have some photos from early Sunnyside garden neighborhoods. So some reference material of historic photos that does have some of the features we are proposing for our ridge deck. So we'll go over that later as well. And I think we're good.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. I feel like this is like some other proposals that we've seen in the past where it's minor, doesn't really, it's not really visible from the street. It seems to be in line with a lot of other neighbors' additions. So I see no concerns with this, but would love to open it up to the group to see if there's any questions or comments or concerns.
I think we have some more to say.
Well, I just wanted to just mention that one of the things that why we're before the board is that we want the new building, the new house has casement windows along the whole sides that open out. And some of the to get a the landmark committee could approve it staff-wise if we made it smaller with 3 feet on each side. I'm not sure exactly why, but that's what they would want. But if we did that, it would be right in the middle of the 2 windows. They wouldn't operate, it wouldn't open. I don't think it would look as good. So we're, hoping to have a wider deck, and it's going to be about 30 inches off the ground. And we in response to the deck being too substantial, we made the joist smaller. We removed the 2-inch concrete on the 3-foot sides to make it non-combustible, and replaced it with some porcelain tile that'll have a lighter touch and still be non-combustible. We also reduced the railing, reduced the size of the posts to make it smaller and just nicer looking. So that's why we're here. So if you if you have any questions about any of the details, we can go through it. But
Great. Thanks for the additional info. Christine, is that a new hand or is that from before?
No, no, it's now. I was going to raise the issue about the wood construction within 3 feet of the property line. So your solution is what? I'm not sure I quite understood.
I think it's steel
block
joist
walls under the that support the deck.
I think there's steel joists with some a pillar, and pavers that are tile, porcelain tile. So nothing within 3 feet will be combustible.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing, I'm just curious about your court. I think if you go a couple of slides from the end, there's one that shows the actual configuration of the courtyard inside the court, which seems to show the common walkway stopping at one point. I just want to be sure I was understanding that.
Okay, so there was a time in Sunnyside Gardens when the easements lapsed and
No, I understand. Yeah.
So
are you asking what the pathway for easement is like in a neighborhood?
No, I was just trying to understand the relationship of this deck to the common walkway.
So in this slide right here, we do show the pathway. So it goes up like this, and then it takes a left, and it continues up.
Okay, all right. So a little bit of the pathway is actually on this property, but within the easement area.
I think a small bit where the fence is, I think that I don't know exactly what happened. Our fence for our backyard is about 3 feet into our property, which I think that was walkway. What happened to that walkway, I wouldn't know.
Okay,
You know, our fence does allow for a walkway, but I don't know what happened to that walkway.
okay. And the court association has no jurisdiction over your deck. Presumably, they would have jurisdiction over the pathway and stuff, over the common area.
That's my knowledge.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, let's go to Nick and then the room.
I actually was gonna make a motion to approve.
Let's see if there's any other comments in the room.
Brad,
Right, you wanted to see?
Yeah, and I don't know if this is like in the scope of our review, but am I understanding that the outside face of the deck will be the porcelain tile?
No,
Okay.
that's the
It's the decking.
mesh, the metal mesh.
Ah,
Will
okay.
be the
That's, I'll go to that slide.
Yeah.
So it looks like this, so it'll be sheet metal and it'll be folded in. It'll be kind of a box shape, and then on the inner panels, we'll put this mesh material as shown in the drawings.
So the porcelain tile is on the
on the
deck
deck
itself
okay,
within
yeah.
3 feet of the.
Yeah.
Right, so here's a photo of the porcelain tile, so that'll be within 3 feet of the property line. But the area that's not within 2 feet, we'll probably use cedar wood for that.
Okay.
Maury?
Yeah, I just, a quick question. So it looks like you're using beautiful materials, sustainable, you're really trying to keep within the community. And
Absolutely.
maybe even doing more than what some have done in the past. Florida was, protected area. But one question I have, and this is really outside the scope, but I noticed with you choosing all these sustainable materials, and I noticed it looks like the back is concrete. Is it all concrete, the whole?
No,
Oh,
just,
just a
uh,
little part.
Just, I guess, I don't know how many feet,
Yeah.
but longer than what our deck is going to be.
Yeah, I was just curious.
It's gonna be about 12 feet, so
Of
right,
concrete?
of concrete right up to the deck, and the rest will be long area. So the deck is gonna be around 11.
That's old concrete, it's like from there a long time.
Yes, yes, it's still there. So it's gonna be, the deck is gonna be about 11 to 12 feet wide. And then after that, be a little bit more concrete, maybe 6 inches of concrete, and the rest will be long area.
So you have to add new concrete?
No,
Oh,
I think the concrete is good there. Yeah.
But is it the porous kind or is it different, the old kind?
I am not sure about that.
That's all.
I'd also like to mention that the, for about 1.5 feet on each side of the deck, we're gonna have greenery. So it's gonna look nice
Right.
for the neighbors and for us. And it's good for green,
Right, so we do have this enlarged pad, so we do have planters on both sides. Probably a patio table, a sofa, and maybe some lawn chairs.
Beautiful.
So I'm gonna switch to side view, and you can see planters on both sides, and we got a table and a sofa on the other side.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? All right, Nick, you want to make the motion to vote?
Absolutely. I'd like to motion to approve.
I'll second it. This one seems uncontroversial, so we can just do a show of hands. All in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, looks like this is also unanimous.
Well, thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming. All right, those are all the presentations we had for this month. Why don't we get on to our usual agenda points? Fagler, are you on? Oh, you're in person, of course. Cool. You want to go through some of your usual agenda items?
Where would you like to start? I guess I can start with HPDs. There's no updates on parcel E. According to the timeline, should be designated summer and spring. That. Have you guys been able to get in touch with an HPD first point of contact?
No, I honestly have not reached out. I'll take that as a follow-up. Can you send me their email address?
Sure. I can let you know who we talked with the HOP about parts.
Cool.
And then similar update for, LIC implementation, no news yet. I don't know if any of you have probably more information than me about the oversight committee.
Yeah, a number of us are on the oversight committee, so they're still working behind the scenes. It's going to be publicly announced soon. So once it is, we'll have more information and the members who are on it can share updates.
Sounds good. What other items would you like me to speak to?
The only other thing that I have that's relevant to you is the rezoning at 50-01 or 02. I don't know if there's any updates on those parcels.
Yeah, so for 5002 Queens Boulevard, I think there's just a few things that need to be tied up, but certification will probably happen sometime soon. And for 5001, you guys received a notice of filing because they filed their first land use application. So that's why it's on your radar now. I can't anticipate when that might come to you.
Okay, cool. We'll be on the lookout for both of those. Any questions for Fagala here? All right, if not, we'll keep it moving. The only other thing I wanted to bring up in terms of projects that we've talked about in the past is the Newtown Creek CSO tunnel. So we got a statement of findings from the DEP. And Raphael, if you could take as a follow-up to email it to the committee members if you haven't done it yet. I think you might have sent it to just me and Tanya. But they basically did their assessment, their final environmental impact statement, and had a report out on that. So I can summarize it really quickly right now, but then you'll get it in your inbox to read in detail if you want to. So just as a reminder, this is the storage tunnel that's going to be an 11-year project. It's going to store something like 50 million gallons of combined sewer overflows from 4 different outfalls. It's aimed to reduce pollution in Newtown Creek, and the construction is going to be completed around 2040. What they found in their environmental impact statement was that it's supposed to have minimal long-term impacts on a lot of the things that they check for, things like land use, community facilities, historic resources, energy, air quality, public health, all that kind of stuff. But they did say that they would have temporary significant adverse impacts on construction traffic, noise, and some air quality. They were talking about localized PM 2.5. I'm not an environmental guy, but I think that refers to some particulate matter that's in the air due to the construction. They talked about some mitigation measures, including traffic enforcement agents, monitoring programs, but they also just sort of acknowledged that some construction noise impacts nearby are just unavoidable due to what they're doing. So again, yeah, that's sort of what they found. Read through it in more detail, and we can always reach out to DEP if we have more questions. Any reactions to that?
Did they say how long temporary?
I would imagine the duration of construction, so 11 years.
I guess as somebody who kind of lives close to there and who's an asthmatic, the PM2 thing gives me pause. Like it seems like it's not it's unavoidable, but I don't plan on going anywhere soon. I own my home here, so PM2 like elevation for the next 11 years does not sound like a good time for me. But that's just a personal thing. If the ultimate goal is that it's going to reduce pollution overall, I'll live, but I have a feeling there may be quite a few other people that might feel that way because, we like breathing.
Yeah, totally. And you should, once you get the full file in your inbox, you should take a read through it, and especially that part. And if you have any, specific questions or concerns, we can always email DEP. All right. Cool. The next thing I want to talk about is all of the land use stuff, the land use consultant stuff that we've been talking about for a couple of sessions now. And I want to first apologize. We should have made more progress on this in the past month, but for obvious reasons, I wasn't doing a lot of stuff this month, but we'll pick it back up. But luckily, Christine and Brad have been making progress. They've already reached out to their 2 assignments. Christine reached out to George Janes, and Brad reached out to CARP Strategies. And it seems like we've had some fruitful discussions already. Brad and Christine, do you want to just very quickly summarize the conversations you've had so far? Why don't we start with Brad?
Sure. Yeah, so I reached out to CARP Strategies. They are interested, basically, they haven't done this kind of consulting of community boards before, but it sounded like they've done, similar kind of consulting to private developers. And they are capable of doing it. So they actually just had an internal meeting to look at it yesterday, and we just heard back. So I guess we need to set up a call with them or something along those lines to further the conversation, but it seems like there's potential there. I also reached out to an expediter that I work with, named Manny Russell with Greenlight Expediting. And he was very interested as well. And I think, he's very knowledgeable, and I think he could be great. One thing I did just want to bring up is that the scope of work document that you shared with me, it does include like zoning diagrams, massing diagrams, those sorts of things. I think that's maybe a group like CARP could do that. I don't, like an expediter would not be able to do that. So, and I think that probably with the budget that we have, I think that's probably a bit more than we would be able to ask for anyways.
Yep, makes sense. Appreciate you reaching out to both of them. Excited to see how the conversations go. I'm going to try to join you for those. And just as a reminder to folks, what we're trying to do here is have conversations to see how sort of realistic what we're asking for is and how we might set up such a partnership. And then once we have a few of these conversations, I'd love to do, some sort of official RFP so all of these folks can submit their pricing and their capabilities, and then we can have an informed decision-making process. And then Christine, you were talking to George.
Yeah, I actually haven't spoken to him. I've emailed and I've emailed him, gotten a very positive response. Yes, he's interested. I sent him the draft scope, just that text that you had, the latest that I had seen from you. And he suggested a call tomorrow at noon, which you or Tanya would be welcome to join. But I think what might be the most helpful to learn from him, since we don't seem to have a firm time frame at this point, well, 2 points. We don't have a firm time frame. It would be interesting to know, since he does consult with a lot of community boards, what different arrangements he has, whether it's
he would be a good one for that,
or an on-call basis with some kind of upset price. I'm just not sure. So that would be interesting to hear. And the other thing that I think we need to be aware of, and maybe discuss with Raphael and also Michael, is how I know that there's something where at the end of the year, if you have unspent funds, if you can sort of reserve them for something that you can kind of spend the money on right away, that's a way to preserve the money that is allocated to the board. Does that sound right, Michael? So
I'm not totally sure, but there was definitely an expense made last July for laptops that the district manager shared was from the previous fiscal year's budget. So that would be consistent with what you just said, that there is a way to.
Yeah, and when I spoke to the district manager of CB5 in Manhattan, she said that's what she did.
Great.
But somehow that means you have to somehow spend those funds. So I don't know if there's a way to sort of have an amount allocated for consulting, but not necessarily, spend it all in July or whatever. So we just should be mindful of the budget of the fiscal year.
Is that when our fiscal year ends? Is it July?
I think it's June, right?
It's June.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point, Christine. Yeah, let's definitely earmark those if we can.
yeah. So, if anybody wants to join me tomorrow, you're welcome to, but otherwise I'll just try and sort of press him for, find out what I can about, different ways that he's worked.
Yeah, I unfortunately won't be able to, but looking forward to hearing what you find out.
Okay.
Cool. So the other three we were going to reach out to, Kenny, you were going to reach out to Bonnie. I was going to reach out to urban cartographers, and Tanya was going to do BFJ planning. So we do have that. Oh, Tanya, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually did. I spoke with one of the principals, Frank Fish. He is very interested in being part of this. They do have experience in all of, I share the letter draft. They have experience in everything. He will send, well, he actually told me he will send a proposal soon. And what he was thinking is him and another person being part of the team as senior associate. So that way, when we have like the emergency calls or last minute calls, any of them could answer.
Great. That's awesome. Would love to see his proposal, and I think that could help us structure our RFP as well. So that'd be awesome. So yeah, I'll reach out to urban cartographers. Kenny, are you still on Bonnie?
Yeah, I just haven't had it. I got caught up because I thought we weren't quite ready
All
with
good.
the proposal.
All good. So you have the text of the email now, so you can just copy and paste and send that out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. And then, yeah, go ahead.
I also reached out to NYU Tandem to speak to Manny Fatole.
Oh,
great.
He's also interested in being part of supporting us, but he recommended someone else. He said that he will reply on letting us know in what areas he could support, but he felt that we should reach out to Tom Devani. He is, he has experience in just the type of project we're gonna have in One LIC. So he sent me that last night, so I will reach out to him in this.
Awesome. Thanks, Tanya. Appreciate it. Yeah, looking forward to hearing what you get from this top person. Cool. I'll reach out to Pratt Center. Again, I haven't done this yet, but Pratt Center is the one that's leading the One LIC oversight committee. So I do have their information, so I'll reach out to them. Something else that I'll do is, actually, Tanya, you might be able to help with this, since you've already started the academic outreach. If you could just send us the email that you used to reach out to the academic institutions, and then we can all just sort of edit that for the outreach that we're going to do. That'd be super helpful.
You mean I reach out to Manny Fatole directly?
Yeah, so if there's like a template that you use to reach out to him and say, like, here's what we need, I think that would be helpful. Because I'll use the same thing for the Pratt Center. We had Maury who was going to reach out to Parsons or the New School. Danielle was going to do Hunter, so we can use that same template.
Well, for Manny, I actually use the same template that I use for BFJ planning. Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, well, so why don't I take that as a follow-up then? Because for the academic partnerships, we want to do something slightly different. We don't need them for on-call land use support. We actually want to explore some longer-term planning work with them about, potentially looking at entire neighborhoods and thinking about how to sort of rezone or land use changes we want to make as a whole. So why don't I take a stab at that one?
So why don't you let me talk to Manny first? And depending on the conversation that he says, and you can join, on what is his ability to support us. That way we modify that document for the academic ones.
Sure, sounds good. Cool. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, this is just somewhat related to the most recent exchange. I happened to be listening to like a city planning commission hearing a couple of weeks ago about the fast tracking proposal. So one of the ballot initiatives that the city passed last November fast tracks certain affordable housing projects, basically. And when I was listening to some of the public comments, I learned some things that I thought were interesting that other boards have that could be sort of like interesting things that we potentially could develop as part of these long-term planning efforts. So one thing I heard from a board on the, I think on the west side of Manhattan, is that they have essentially an affordable housing plan which identifies lots that the board has sort of said they think is appropriate for like either greater density, so like mixed income housing under MIH, or 100% affordable housing. And I thought that was like an interesting idea to just go to that level of granularity of identifying sites as one potential thing. And then another thing that got me thinking of that I didn't hear about, but this board has discussed before, is kind of like trying to create policies around how we handle certain case by case decisions. So one thing that comes to mind are the after hours construction permits that sometimes come up, where people ask us, like developers, or basically the construction companies employed by developers, ask to work on a Saturday morning or something like that. And I wonder if like one thing we could do is create policies around, like what sorts of projects we would support that for, and so on. So anyway, as you're engaging with academics, those are just like examples maybe of the sorts of things that we could pursue.
Yeah, I love that. And my thought actually was, and we talked about this a little bit last time, is that the land use values framework that we had discussed, that I think Nick originally brought up, would address some of that stuff. So things like our, after hours policies, our apartment size mixes, our, desire to have parking or not. I think we should standardize all this so we're not, up and down on every single proposal that comes before us, and we have a little more consistency. So that is something I want to work on in the coming months. So Raphael and Maury actually found a previous sort of land use framework document that the board had created. I think it was in 2022. It's not quite what we're looking for. They were listing some more like short-term goals that they wanted to do. I think ours would be more of, like you said, Michael, more of a policy document that we can apply as a framework. But we can use it as a start and keep adding on. And something that we can probably do is look at, the last couple of years of ULURP approvals or denials that we've done, and just take a look at what was the sort of consistent themes across all of them, and use that as a basis as well. So why don't we take that as an action item, and I'll probably work with Raphael. You and I can figure out a way to do this.
Sounds good.
For me, I think there's some stuff in that document from the goals and stakeholders that probably could be used, just, well, the first sentence is like that, maybe adapted, could be like part of the mission statement of the committee. But then some of the other things about, how we feel about parks and greenways and, those things, and who our stakeholders will be, as well as things about like incorporating housing issues as an ongoing land use committee, what are eviction prevention, tenant of the edge. That this was one of the most robust of all the mission statements of all, when I was chair of all the committees that created one. Well, obviously, the original intention of it was to kind of be an overarching kind of mission to give direction. So as time passes, different committees over time will evolve and be able to institute their own policies. So I think it makes total sense, to actually have a framework for our committee as it is currently, and to be consistent with our policies.
Yeah, totally. And I actually liked a lot of what they created, years ago. And I think we can probably just lift.
And Tanya, I think.
No, it was Christine and Lisa.
Oh.
Nice. Yeah, I think we can probably just lift almost all of it and include it, and then add on to it with like the more sort of prescriptive things that we've been talking about.
Which I think is important. But it might need to be pared down somewhat too, because it was too specific in some areas. Maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
I do have.
Yeah, Tanya, go ahead.
So could we add to this kind of cheat sheet that we will have something similar what we had with land use? I do feel like a lot of these landmark that we saw. I feel like we have a lot of landmarks.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
all the time for things that they have to go to a hearing to the board, making it more expensive for the client, and the client kind of maybe not moving forward because they feel like coming to the community board is a little scary and also expensive for them. So if we could just have the project here, listen and advise. Unless we feel it's super controversial, we bring them to the board. If not, I think it could be just advice.
Yeah, I agree. I think we can come up with some sort of very lightweight checklist to say, are you satisfying all these conditions that we usually ask about? If so, like we're good. Great. All right, I'm going to run through some of the other stuff that we talked about last time too. I know we probably haven't made too much progress yet, but just want to keep it top of mind. Kenny, you were potentially going to reach out to the Civic Engagement Commission to see what resources they might have on land use. If you haven't done that yet, why don't we just keep that on your radar?
Yeah, it's on my radar.
Okay, thank you. Michael, you and I need to review the statement of needs and respond to any city agencies that are worth responding to. So let's set up some time and you and I can do that.
That sounds great.
Cool. And then we were going to talk about a few potential areas of advocacy. So if any of these owners feel the spirit and want to write, a one-page letter for this committee to review, we had talked about, Maury, you felt strongly about things related to rent stabilization or rent increases. Kenny, you were talking about small business displacement, and Danielle, you were talking about grocery access. So if you ever want to, write that letter as a draft for us, we'll take a look and we'll sign it and send it off.
For me, do you remember the one for me? I can't remember whether it was for in general or if it was for small business stabilization.
It was rent, it was common, it was rent.
It was the one we were gonna do.
Tenant.
Oh, yeah, the tenants and DHCR, right.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
We talked about one in the small business committee about.
Yeah, Kenny was going to take the one about small business displacement.
Yeah, and where exactly would this letter go? Or that's just a statement of our own policy? Or
I think this one we could address it to, whatever elected officials or city agencies, have the power to, make whatever change we're recommending. So this would be a letter that we could sign and send.
I was thinking also to put the community oversight committee on our radar with that.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Yeah.
Also, the small business rent stabilization, that bill, I reached out because I thought it was what I was supposed to do. I reached out to Emily Gallagher's office, who sponsored it in the assembly. And then at our last school board meeting, I asked the question to Gonzalez, Senator Gonzalez. And she is one of the co-sponsors of the bill in the Senate. So it would make sense to send to both of them. But the rest of our elected officials are pretty much up for election right now. So it's a good time to advocate for them. And then
they'll promise anything to us right now. So let's do it.
Can I point out that the small business bill, it relates directly to grocery stores? Because
there's one for that's in general that Emily Gallagher did that was for
it's for something specific. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, because some of the issue that I have learned about for grocery stores is that the smaller chains struggle with rent.
Yeah.
Too, and that's why a lot of them close. But the big national chains don't have that struggle.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And
Danielle, was that what your hand was about? Yeah, go ahead.
For city services, we have very straightforward, like very clear checklists for liquor license, cannabis license. We also do cab and limo renewals, much less so, but we do them. And we have these very clear, like, this is what you need to bring. These are all the items you need to bring. These are the questions we're going to ask you. This is what you like, everything they need, so that when they come in, much like someone coming in to get a permit for something in Sunnyside Garden, they know what they need. So we're not wasting their time or their money because they're paying a lawyer usually to do this. Like, I can share them if that helps.
Yeah, that'd be great. I actually, when I was chair of land use for CB6 in Forest Hills, I came up with something very similar for developers. And in addition to the presentation they would do, they had to fill out a Google Doc that had all of our standard questions. So we had that already. We would circulate it to committee members and it just cut down on like the presentation time and back and forth. So I can dig up that old Google Doc and maybe we can implement something
I
similar.
will say with bar owners, you have to sort of meet them and talk to them though, because some are.
Yeah. Fair.
But yeah.
Cool. And then the last thing I had, Michael and Raphael, you two, I had to tasked as exploring the digitization of our records. This is obviously going to be a very long-term thing, but I want to just make sure it's on your radar.
Got it.
Yeah, I mentioned it. The executive committee didn't meet in March. We're scheduled to meet next week, so hopefully we can discuss it live there. But I mentioned it asynchronously to the folks on the board and on the executive committee, and so they're aware. And then I think Roz mentioned that she comes to the office a lot and sometimes helps figure out what paperwork we need. I mean, I can't speak to that, but it sounds like she might be kind of doing this to some extent already, but Raphael would know better than me about that. But it's on my mind. I am curious, Raphael, if this has come up with Roz, though.
Not really, but she does come in weekly to help out with this transition process.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I might ask then that as she's doing that, if she finds like a big bucket of land use documents, or if you have, maybe that's like an area we can focus to try to digitize those records before we lose them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
On this topic, I do know that there are local government like digitization and improvement grants from the state. I don't know if that is something that we are that's applicable to us as a community board, but they do exist and there are probably similar pots of money.
Nick, can I task you to just link us to a few of them so we can read up on it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
And I know Anatole has a connection with Beta NYC, and they do a lot of stuff that helps the government agencies digitize and transform. So maybe we can ask.
Yeah. Great.
If we have a scanner, maybe we can get an intern just to focus on those boxes.
Yeah, I think if we have a specific goal in mind, if we're like, hey, these 20 boxes all need to be digitized, that seemed like a good project for an intern. But I think we need to get to, what it is we're digitizing first, and that'll probably take a little bit of work. All right, that's all that I had on my agenda. I know there's a lot of things that we talk about. A lot of this is going to be a long-term project, but appreciate everyone keeping at it and taking all the appropriate next steps. And again, apologies, I didn't make too much progress on some of this over the past month, but I think I'm a little bit back in action now. So we'll keep on trucking. Anything else people want to talk about before we break?
Move to adjourn.
All right.
Let's
do it. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. And thank you to all the new members. Excited to have you on board. Talk soon.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. There was a brush and just nobody thought so. I thought so.